Pisces, and welcome to your full moon in Aries reading for the beginning of October. So quite a month October is likely to be, if the astrology is anything to go by. And I do recommend that if you haven't already seen my video on the cosmic weather of this full moon in Aries, that you go and check out that video either on YouTube or the extended version on my in the members area of my website. And of course, if you aren't a subscriber, do consider it, because it's free and it'll give you access to a whole lot of extra bonus material that you don't get in the public domain. And for that, you just have to go to astrologysphere.com/subscribe and just fill in the form. So anyway, let's dive into reading, Pisces. As you can see, I'm changing things up again a little bit. What I'm doing is I'm using the Arcana of astrology cards just to illustrate some of the key astrological concepts going on for you at this particular full moon. It just makes it easier for non-astrologers to follow what I'm talking about when it comes to the positions or movement of the planets. So at this full moon, the sun will be in Libra here in your 8th house. So the 8th house is all about what we share with others, usually one other person. So it can be things like physical resources. So with a spouse, for example, a marriage partner, we have things in common. We share a home, we share, sometimes a car, sometimes we share bank accounts. So this is the area that's being highlighted by the sun in Libra. And of course, the sun in Libra is all about justice, equilibrium, and balance. So if things have been out of balance in this area of your life, whether it's to do with physical resources or sort of psycho-spiritual ones like trust, intimacy, that kind of thing, things should start to come back into balance over the 2 weeks that follow this particular full moon. And then, of course, the full moon itself will be in your 2nd house, which is all about earned income, physical possessions, but also, we have lots of different forms of income or worth, on a more psychological level. This is about our skills, it's about our self-worth, how we value ourselves. It can also be about, self-esteem, all those good things. So those are the 2 areas that are being highlighted for you, during this upcoming moon phase. So I'm just going to move those to the side a little bit. Now, also going on during this full moon are a couple of important planetary kind of energies. So the first is the fact that the full moon in Aries will be making a conjunction to Chiron. Now, Chiron is an asteroid, so it's not a planet, it's a smaller kind of object, but it represents the head of the centaurs, Chiron. And Chiron is associated with that feeling of being a misfit, of not quite somehow belonging, of being a reject. So it talks about very deep wounds that very often stay with us throughout our lives and continue to be kind of activated by similar kind of circumstances. So very often, some kind of triggering, and usually it's sustained early on in life. For me, certainly it's usually around about the age of kind of 11, 12, 13 is usually, just when you're kind of coming into puberty. Very often this is where we sustain Chiron type of wounds. So there's an opportunity here for emotional healing when it comes to this full moon, given the combination of the moon and Chiron. So in your 2nd house, this could be about maybe getting the affirmation, kind of making some realizations about what you actually have to offer to contribute to others. And that could be through an event, it could just be an inner shift or realization. We'll find out more when we do the Geomancy reading. And then the other thing that is important is that Saturn will be newly direct in the sign of Capricorn. So for you, that is 11th house, which is friendships, as well as professional associations, social media, networking, any type of group situation where you kind of have something in common, whether it's a political ideal or whether it is simply a bond of friendship. So Saturn is now direct after being retrograde for, well, about 6 months. It has gone back into Capricorn which it ingressed around about the equinox. And as I've discovered during these readings, this idea of equinoxes as being liminal points where seasons shift from one thing to another does seem to be very important at this full moon. It is the harvest moon after all. It's the first full moon after the equinox. And, at the equinox, this is when the sun crosses the equator. So it moves from one hemisphere into the other. And, for us, this is an indication of a shift of the seasons. So spring and autumn are essentially liminal seasons where we're moving from where spring is morphing into winter or summer is moving into winter or vice versa. And with Saturn turning direct, there's a sense of having to finally put to rest or manifest some of the changes precipitated by the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction back in January. So we had that very momentous conjunction in Capricorn around about the 10th of January. And at the moment, Saturn and Pluto have both retrograded back to a similar part of the zodiac. So now that Saturn's turned direct, it's going to make its final pass through those degrees of Capricorn before finally ingressing into Aquarius in December, where it will remain. It won't go back into Capricorn. So this is a really kind of important time of consolidation. And it could be, as I said in my cosmic weather forecast, it could have something to do with structures like finances. It could be to do with old age, planning for the future, so pensions, that kind of thing. And in that respect, given that Saturn is coming off of a square to Mars, which is also sitting in your second house of earned income, it could well have something to do with some investments that you've made, maybe through some online investment tool, some where you've maybe invested in shares or something of that ilk. And it may be that this square has meant that your investments haven't paid off, or they haven't done as well, maybe they're not as performing as well, and there's a sense of frustration at things not really progressing forward. And that's perfectly in keeping with the Saturn-Mars square energy that we've had since the end of August. So Saturn and Mars made their first square to each other about the 24th of August, and then Mars went retrograde and moved back towards Saturn for a second square, at which point Saturn then changed direction. So first Mars turned retrograde. Saturn was already retrograde. So they both moved in the same direction after this first square. For the second square, Mars is still retrograde, but Saturn has changed direction. So they've almost they're kind of mirroring each other. And you could have that, for example, between you and a friend. It could be that whatever is happening in the life of a friend, for example, is somehow mirroring what's happened to you. And that could be where your realization, your healing aha moment comes from, is seeing that whatever's happened to a friend, the way that you view that situation pertains to you as well. And, if you are compassionate or you're less judgmental of a friend in that situation, why would you be so hard on yourself? I think that's, probably what we're kind of talking about there. Now, the other thing to say is that Mars is going to be making a conjunction to Black Moon Lilith. Now, this for me is a point. It represents the dark side of the moon. And so it's what we don't see, often what's unconscious, what's buried, what we've repressed or denied. Sometimes this can be projected onto other people. So I think it's interesting we've got this 11th house dynamic here. It could well be that some relationship or bond with a friend or a group is mirroring back some energy to you of something that you don't necessarily want to admit about yourself. So do bear that in mind between now and the rest of the waning moon cycle, because there does seem to be some kind of healing message for you here that pertains to the connection between your self-worth, your income and your value on one hand, and then your relationship to friendships or groups to the other. So very interesting dynamics going on. But it's not all kind of bad news. Venus will be switching signs just after this full moon. So she will be ingressing into the sign of Virgo, which is actually your 7th house. So, if you're hoping that things are going to improve when it comes to romantic relationships, it certainly is a good omen. Now, throughout October, Venus is actually going to be making some really positive aspects to some of the other planets, which is just as well because we're going to have quite a lot of volatile energy from the outer planets happening during October. So externally, it's going to be quite volatile. I think when it comes to, politics, finances, and kind of the global economy. But I think when it comes to relationships and our kind of internal world, things are going to be looking very different, much more positive. So just do bear that in mind. The other thing, of course, is that at the next new moon, we've got a Jupiter-Neptune sextile. Now, of course, Neptune is your ruling planet, so Neptune will be here in your first house. And so this is very, very auspicious energy. We had 2 passes before this. The first was in, I think, about the 20th of February, and the second was towards the end of July. So this is the final pass of this very, very magical energy when we really are in a position to make some very positive, either spiritual shifts or kind of a shift into kind of love-based abundance, 5D kind of energy. So, just bear that in mind. But let's get into your reading and find out what wants to come through. Don't want to make this video too long. But yes, quite a power month, Pisces. Just bear that in mind. And, I think we are going to see quite a lot that could be potentially a little bit scary happening in the outer world. I think with that Jupiter, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction finally biting in the outer world, certain structures are going to be falling away. And that is potentially scary, but I think we need to see it as essential, as necessary to kind of clear the way for new ways of living and governing and communing to be born. Right. So I'm going to be I'm not going to turn over every single geomantic figure. Otherwise, I just think it's information overload, and there's often repeats of figures. So we're going to be quite focused today, I think, in terms of messages. Right, let's start with the second and the 8th house. Yeah, so what was I saying about things shifting? So, here where we have Aries, the full moon in Aries, we've got Via, which is a water-based, or, it's a geometric figure that is associated with the element of water. So Via is the moon in Cancer, and for me, this is all about forward movement, momentum, a shift, a positive shift. So I do really feel that this full moon is about things kind of balancing or leveling out for you when it comes to you and other people. And isn't it interesting that we've got conjunctio here in your 8th house of shared resources? So here, conjunctio is earth-based. It's an earth geomantic figure. It is ruled by Mercury in Virgo. So this is the sign that rules your 7th house of partnerships. And conjuncture is all about coming together with other people. Very often it can be about marriage. It can be about some kind of alliance. It's certainly about uniting opposites. And of course, that is exactly what happens at a full moon. The sun and the moon sit on opposite sides of the earth. They form a straight line with the earth. And in that sense, they're all kind of aligned. This polarity of energies we're being asked to balance here in the middle. So the same thing goes for conjunctio. So given that it's in your 8th house, it could well have something to do with mediation, for example. So if there's been some kind of legal matter that's been pending, maybe through a mediator, things get resolved now. But conjunctures can also be about joint ventures of some kind. So let's have a look at some of your other geomantic figures. Right, so interesting. I think this kind of hints at what I was saying about Venus changing signs. So Caput Draconis is the head of the dragon. It is fire-based energy. It's about a new cycle starting. in relationships or in business partnerships. So this is about fated relationships or activities, a new karmic cycle starting. And I think there's clearly a relationship here, with Virgo, and also with this idea of Libra being about judgment and about arbitration and balancing on one hand, and then this idea of karmic balancing or a new cycle starting for you in your 7th house. So for me, this is very much associated with that ingress of Venus into your 7th house, which should bode very well for relationships, whether these are business partnerships or whether they are committed romantic relationships. So let's see what else is happening. Let's see 10th house. Oh, nice. So yes, a definite shift for the better when it comes to your career and and kind of earnings. Here in your 10th house, we've got acquisitio. Now this is often about acquisitions, so financial gain. It's definitely about expansion in terms of your career path and your ability to succeed. So naturally, this should be reflected either in the way that you see yourself, the way you value your skills and your competence levels, but equally in terms of your earned income. So that's very positive. I just want to see what's happening in your 11th house. Wow. So if you remember correctly, this is where Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter are going to be. And interesting that we've got Fortuna Major coming up here. So this is fire-ruled energy. It's the Sun in Leo. Very, very fortunate, upbeat, confident energy. So this is about, being favored, in a way. So I do feel as though if any situations do occur at this full moon that have to do with a friend or with a group situation, that it'll put you in a good light, that you will see this as a fortunate turn of events. Possibly this person is making you see yourself in a new way, and that's why we've got fear here in your 2nd house, where the moon is going to be. Maybe this person is reflecting something back to you that's positive, and maybe it's going to give you a bit of a boost when it comes to your confidence, and this in turn is going to reflect well, in terms of career. Now, it could also be about some kind of networking and opportunity coming through your network. So maybe this shift in income is to do with some tip or opportunity that is kind of bumped your way by a friend or a colleague, somebody some kind of associate. Let's see what's happening in the 6th house. Yes. So also about a shift, Capricornus being a new cycle starting. So isn't it interesting that we've got 2 new cycles starting for you in the house of work, pets, and everyday life and health, and also an uptick in relationships. So new job possibly, maybe a positive turn when it comes to health and wellness, and that is a big theme actually at this full moon because of where Aries is. Health, immunity, wellness, vitality is very well starred, because if you think about Aries, it's ruled by Mars, and Mars is going to be in Aries, and Mars is very much about the life force. So there's definitely an opportunity here to kind of increase life force energy. So that's looking really positive too. Let's do some clarification with the trinkets. In fact, before we do that, if there is a new cycle starting, let's see what's going on in the 5th house. Fascinating. So same geomantic figure as your 8th. So this could point to a joint venture that is work-based between you and another person, maybe a sharing of time, energy, skills to create something new. This may be what's kind of boosting your career. Could be creative, could also be related to children, leisure activities, like if you work in the tourism industry or the arts, gambling, all of those are 5th house. But equally it could be about coming together with somebody new, so maybe potentially a new love relationship coming in for you. So anyway, we'll see. So first of all, that assets have that Aries moon. Interesting. So this is the birds, and for me the birds is about communication. It can also be, as I say, I think it has to do with this mirroring that I think is going to be happening between you and a friend or an associate. Also social media, it could be that things come up on your feed that make you think about your own self-worth and value in a different way. But sometimes it can be about kind of nervous energy, you know, people gossiping about you, or anxiety, you know, that kind of nervous chatter that can go on in your head. But I don't really think so, not with fear here. I kind of think that if people are talking about you, they're saying good things, given these very positive geomantic figures. Right, let's have one for conjunctio in your 8th house. Okay, so I think this is for 5th and 8th. So we've got the same geomantic figure here, and in both houses. So I think that conjunctio here is saying that, you know, if you have had bad experiences in the past, in terms of the divvying up of assets or the sharing of time, energy, and effort, you know, say maybe you and somebody kind of joined forces to do something work related, and you felt like you put in the bulk of the effort and they just kind of coasted along. Well, that is going to change. Your hope, or your kind of your faith in people is going to be restored. This is the star, which is all about looking to the future positively. It's about healing. It's about divine guidance. And I really feel as though if you are going to form some kind of new work partnership going forward, that it will be a much more fair and inspiring partnership. Equally, if you are wanting a fresh start when it comes to love, this certainly looks possible. We've got, you know, the 2 hearts here. So I do feel like a heart-based connection is potentially coming in for you if you're looking for new love. Of course, this could also be a creative project that really kind of is close to your heart, that does exceptionally well, and it maybe changes your finances for the better. That's another way we can read this energy. Let's see what we get for the 7th house. Interesting. So this is the garden, which for me is about like public based activity. So it could be pointing to some kind of work collaboration that that is creative, or that pertains to the industries that I discussed, but which has a kind of a community element to it. Maybe it is for a charity, for example, a good cause. Maybe it's like a public awareness campaign, something of that kind of ilk. But, you know, the garden here is usually about public meetings. So, I mean, if it's romance, it could be about meeting somebody online, you know, on a public forum, through a dating app, on social media, that kind of thing. Yeah. Interesting. So for this Capricornus, we have the letter, and the letter was all about written contracts or communication. So it could be as well that you are getting offered a job. This could be why we've got momentum here in your 2nd house of income, and also why we've got acquisitio in your 10th house of career. So could be new, completely fresh start for you, new job, new love interest, you know, wipe the slate clean, which is great. So let's have one for acquisitio. Lovely. So the fish for me is all about money. So that's great news for your 2nd house. Definitely an uptick in income, but it's also about abundance and flow, which I think echoes this acquisitio here, which is to say is about gain. Now, usually it's gain for efforts that you've already put in, on some levels. So you've either reached a certain level of mastery and you're kind of graduating, so you're being acknowledged for your experience and skills, or it could be because you've put in a lot of kind of grunt work to, like behind the scenes, you've worked quite hard and now you're being rewarded either in the form of a raise or a promotion or some kind of recognition and award, you know, that kind of thing. But the fish is very, very auspicious. So let's just have one for that Saturn in the 11th. It's been a long road, Pisces. You've got the snake here, and that can sometimes be about betrayal or backstabbing in a group situation, but because we've got Fortuna Major here, I'm thinking it's more that this has been a long time coming. So whatever kind of happens now in terms of either love or you know, career that involves a friend or a group, I think has been a long time coming. So for me, this points more to that Mars Saturn square, which has, it very often causes delays, you know. So I think if the last 2 months have been very frustrating, fear not, because things are, momentum is about to kind of pick up again with, you know, Saturn moving away from that square to Mars. So yes, I think really nice reading. Let's just get you some parting advice from the universe. Has your back deck. So please can we have a parting message for Pisces, oops, for the full moon in Aries. Very interesting message. So when I think I've surrendered, I surrender more, which is actually very Piscean, actually. So I'm going to put that here. And then the key to prayer is to forget what I think I need. Very interesting message. We didn't really get into your kind of emotions here, but you know, I think that in general, this is kind of a good way to go for Pisces whenever you're stuck. You are a water sign, and so I kind of feel as though it's pertaining maybe to this water figure here of fear, that if things haven't really panned out in the past, that at a full moon it's a good time to surrender the hurts, frustrations, disappointments of the past, to let them go. And with that flow comes in fresh energy. And of course, we've got Capuchagonus here twice, suggesting that a new cycle is starting for you, probably with that ingress of Venus into Virgo. So yes, I think go with the flow, Pisces, because things are turning in your favor, which is good to see, because you haven't had the easiest couple of months, that's for sure, if the readings are anything to go by. But anyway, I hope you found that useful and helpful. Do let me know in the comments if it's resonated, and if you've enjoyed this, please hit the like button. Wishing you all the very best for this waning moon cycle, and I'll see you again in a fortnight.